said that in other things I've done. Just like, we're here, we're doing things, which is not wrong. We are all doing things. Even when we're like, oh, I did nothing today. That was still a choice. Like, unless you're like literally just kind of sitting there, like even the act of, all I'll do is stare at the wall. Like, that's still a thing you did. I didn't do that for sure. And not for that much time. Takes a lot of focus. But you might notice the environment's a little different. So last time I recorded was December 8th. And in the grand scheme of things, not the best when you're trying to keep it semi-topical. Like these few podcasts are kind of recorded during and around the holidays. So to have something come out early to some people when it's still kind of like it's not as current as it could be, but I'm also not doing like current events. I'm not talking like, today in this country, like, no, I'm not doing that. I might make a remark like that if it makes sense in what I'm talking about, but right now I'm really just focused on doing the work, getting the rhythm, getting everything together. Like I mentioned in episode 1, we're figuring out what this podcast is together. And now we have enough to say that we've had a month of podcasts and people listening to it right now on Patreon will have heard it weeks before the people listening to it on Anchor. So, or utilizing Anchor. I still don't really know what it is, but I'm sure it's great, and it'll come in handy when we need to look at how to get the podcast out to the public. But for all you patrons out there, you have heard it weeks in advance, early, and you can reap the benefits. I don't know what those benefits are right now. You just get it early. You get to tune in early. You get to kind of hear what's going on. Maybe it relates to something in your life, something I talk about. I don't know. This podcast is all up in the air. I haven't done it in almost a month. I haven't recorded something because the month of December was a good kind of busy. It was busy because of the holidays and seeing people. It was busy because of my first couple of gigs for 2021. Both were different types of streaming events. I had one event with this great singer, Brooklyn Cole. Go check her out. If it's Kohl and then Brooklyn, like the city. You can find her, wherever you listen to music. And she came to GR to visit. It was her second time visiting, at least to my knowledge. I think she visited back in February of 2020. And we had a band of all the, a great combination of people. Caleb Elzinga, Evan Taylor, and Benjamin James all in the horn section. Myself, Nuri Tet, D. Washington, Adam Marth, all in the rhythm section. D was holding it down on some vocals, and Brooklyn was the main vocalist. So it was a good mix of pocket grooves, good feeling vibes, great musicians that all listening to each other. And it was a good start to a project that I'm sure is going to evolve over the course of this year. We're planning out some recording sessions, getting into some songwriting. Brooklyn got to check out Third Coast Recording Company for a couple hours. We did some writing before we had a rehearsal for the stream at this yoga studio where the stream took place. And yeah, I think it's going to be a very fun time. We're looking at April to record, and looks like we'll find some dates. But, we played all you Moonchild fans would know this is Cure. if you want to learn that beginning portion, I think by now I should have a sound slice up. I'm working on it. I'm working on getting my transcriptions processed to a point where I can post a couple of them a month on Sound Slice as like, oh, you can check it out, buy it for your melodica, buy it for your keys, whatever. But for people listening who might be curious, it's like a D flat sus 13. You can think of it as like a B major chord shape in root position in the right hand with D flat in the left hand. And then, G flat major 7. You can add in that 9 too. And then good old B flat sus 13. You think of it as like an A flat major shape over a B flat with the F in there. C minor 9, and then that repeats. And then the last time before it goes into the verse, what's that? E flat minor 9. So you go from that D flat sus 13 to E flat minor 9. And then you have E major 7. I guess you with a 9, and then a sharp 11. So you kind of have this like nice ending chord that's outside of the key a little bit. Just in case you're curious. But we played songs like that. Brooklyn's got a mix of kind of, soulfully neo-soul type pop that we were playing also. Things that have some cool grooves. She's worked with different producers. I'm wondering if this group thing we're going on is the first time. I wouldn't say it's the first time. I can't make that assumption. I'll say maybe it's been a minute since she's been able to like get in with a full band because of the pandemic, but who knows? I mean, she seems pretty mobile, at least made the move to New York, or maybe I don't know. It's amazing how like you spend time and you think it's like, oh, there's plenty of time. And then it was like only a couple days. So I don't really know who she is, but funny thing, I could have her on my other podcast where I have guests and I could learn more about her. Which if you haven't listened to that, Mitten Backstage, it'll be public as well when that comes out. So you can look forward to that. This episode of my podcast, because it's loose, because I'm able to kind of do whatever I want in it, is going to be a little bit of a reflection on the year, because I made a little video for socials and stuff. I probably posted it up for patrons. And it showed like, in spite of everything, I still did stuff last year. Like, last year was the first time I went to NAMM. Last year was the first time I recorded with several artists. It was the first time, like, collaboration, remote recording, studio recording. It's nice to know that I like still got to interact with a lot of people. I did at least 24 different album reviews, and I did a mixture of like sneaking in some live shows, doing some streams. It was a lot of me having to like figure out like, with other people. I won't say it was just me, but, trying to piece together, like, who's got what equipment, how do we route the audio, how do we get the video, who's learning, who's growing, all that kind of stuff. And I don't really know, like, hindsight's 2020, but I wouldn't really, like, say like, oh man, if it had been different, so many different things would have happened. Yeah, like I would have gone on a tour. I would have gone on at least 3 tours. One with Earth Radio that I was putting together. One with Brad Fritcher that ended up getting canceled. And then, of course, and one probably with Mark Lavengood. I assume he would have went back to Colorado. We had done 2 tours in 2019 in the fall and early winter out to Colorado to different venues. But I still was able to like interact with a lot of musicians and learn a lot and grow and, you know, have a balance to those days where you're like, man, I have nothing going on. And like getting this office too, it's a great like motivator to like, all right, I'm here. You keep saying you want to make things. That's your job. Make things. So, you know, I'm liking this little two chord groove. You could eat. You could just go all day. But it's interesting to think back to like when things started shutting down last year and how fast that seemed to come. It went from like a rumor to like, oh, my friend knows a person in this industry and is, you know, kind of it works in government. Like, oh, they've heard about this. Like, you know, little bits and pieces of information. You're like, oh, is that going to happen here? Like, we're not the size of other cities, but like it's probably going to happen. But and then, you know, stuff happened and the whole year happened and it was just like, just this never ending, like, what's going to happen tomorrow with everything. And just seeing, you know, kind of the weird, like a lot of the slack was picked up by the artists. It wasn't picked up a ton by, you know, like as much as there were like venues highlighting stuff, they were very much like, we need to save ourselves. Which is fine. Like they needed to really get funding and not have it all go away. But there were so many artists that like took the initiative. I remember there were multiple times where, you know, a venue would be like, yeah, you would totally stream. That's fine. We're only doing takeout right now anyway. And then instead of like, okay, keeping the contract, they're like, well, it's all different now. We can't afford that. And you're like, okay. So we're still doing a show, and we're doing it not in an ideal environment, and we're doing it for no money. Like, that's great. Like, but then, you know, other venues, they stepped up and they're like, we're going to help facilitate tickets. Like, we might be bad at advertising, but we're at least going to make a pathway for you to have a show. And then we would work to promote it, tell people about it, social media, all that stuff. So if people didn't take away if people, I guess, took away one thing this year, they really have to like have an understanding of what it takes to be a musician. Whether they are a creative person themselves or they're on the outside looking in. To have survived as a musician, yes, you're probably doing unemployment because your industry doesn't exist. But you're also learning about these other income streams. You're learning about, like, oh, people make money using virtual tip jars, virtual ticket sales, virtual, like, you know, staging, virtual entertainment. And I could, like, make some money doing that, or what does that mean? Like, what do I have to, how do I do it? What equipment do I need? You know, people are learning about interfaces and cameras and lighting, and like, as you notice right now, and every time I do these, I think critically about what I want to improve. I have this ring light that I got for Christmas, and it's great. I love that I can mount it to different things, and it comes with its own stand and other useful tools. One of them that I'm excited to try out is a Bluetooth camera shutter for my, or like a Bluetooth controller for my camera on my phone. And, you know, like, oh, do I really need to spend money on like a ton of stuff, or what are the bare bones? Like, what can I use that I have around my house? People figuring out that their phones are actually like really useful, or like needing something to make up for the fact that there's no good equipment that they have. But everyone learned something. Everyone learned how to see themselves as more than just a performer. And it's definitely to varying degrees. Some people I know, they really didn't embrace the change that well on the career end. They didn't embrace it. And I'm not saying like, oh, this is just the new normal, accept it. I'm saying embrace the fact that the modern musician has to do more to do more, to get more, to progress more. Yes, if you work at a job and that pays your bills, and you play on weekends, or you play for, you know, once a week, you can have the time and money and resources and patience to like just slowly grow it in your scene, and then maybe that's your goal. You get gigs in the area. But people who are trying to like expand, they're trying to connect with people all over the world, they're trying to see what tools they have as creatives to like grow their platform. You know, you can't just sit there and be like, well, why is no one listening to my things? Like, I know I mentioned in another episode the tricky part of like trying to market to people who, music is such a very personal thing. It's such a personal, engaged thing to be involved with as an artist, as a consumer, as whatever. But especially as a consumer, like, you should already know what you like. And yeah, to a degree, maybe you haven't been exposed to certain things, but chances are if you stumble upon Earth Radio, at least right now, in a way that's semi-organic, where we're not pumping a bunch of money into like ad dollars, especially after The Social Dilemma came out, like it's such a weird thing to try and navigate, where you're like, oh, the algorithms control what you view, but people have some curation, some ability to curate how people can view their own brand, but it's confusing to navigate. But, you know, I mentioned how you should know, like, hey, do you like vinyl? Well, I don't know. How do you not know? Like, do you own a vinyl player? Do you have a way to play records? No. Okay, then you probably don't like vinyl. Do you want a CD? Do you listen to CDs in your car? Do you still have a stereo? Do you listen to them on your computer? Do you burn them and like make mix CDs? Is that even still a thing people do? I remember doing that in like high school when, you know, iPod Touches were still new and iPhones were still new, and there weren't as many streaming platforms. And it's like, what do you want? What do you want? Here's what we have. Do you want anything? No. That's fine. I just need a yes or no, because that helps. That's data. Like, if you're like, if you even in passing are like, I don't like beanies. All right, we figured out someone who doesn't like beanies. They didn't like them enough to say they don't like beanies. And it's kind of the same idea of like when you're on YouTube and you see like, oh man, this guy's gonna get destroyed. He had 600,000 dislikes. I'm like, no, that means he had 1 million people plus watch his video. So he's got attention, and attention is so much easier to like turn into like a career rebound than people who are just like, I don't care about this guy anymore, and they unsubscribe, block the channel, put them in the back burner. People stop reporting on them. Nobody cares. People stop caring in larger numbers. That's way harder to come back from than, a very public explosion. Like, there's a reason why, like, pop stars who've had very public meltdowns, like, if they're still doing things, they're still in the public sphere. If they're not doing things, then nobody cares about them. It's as easy as that. Like, if people are giving you eyeballs, whether they're good or bad, you have the opportunity to, turn the eyeballs into something usable, something, you turn the eyeballs into like an opportunity. I think of like, good old, I'm picking minor keys all the time. Logan Paul. Logan Paul. He, just 2 or 3 years ago was known as the kid who like basically harassed an entire culture and then topped it off by filming a dead body and putting it in the thumbnail of his video trip, which is like all kinds of tone deaf, narcissistic, like does not relate to other people, cannot relate to other people, does not understand people, and is totally just lost in his own ego. And then he did kind of the apology, like, I'm so sorry. And now he's known as like the dude who podcasts. He brought Pokemon cards back into a huge public attention with his giant purchases. And then MMA, or yeah, I guess boxing. But it's like, oh, he's disciplined now. He's like training, and it's like, yeah, he is, but that's a physical thing. Like, I don't know how much it's a discipline, but I don't know how much it counteracts the stuff he did as a kid. And there's the thing. It's like, oh, well, we got to forgive people for what they, it's like, this was like still like 2 years ago. This is not that much different. That's like if 26-year-old me was like, did something, and then I'm talking to you now, and you're going to probably still have 26-year-old me in your head. Like, oh, yeah, that's the guy who said he, I don't know, what would be something controversial? Does it like Keith Jarrett? I don't think that's controversial. That's like a jazz thing. I do like Keith Jarrett, but like, what would be something controversial? I don't know. I can't really say it because I don't think of that controversial stuff. Because I'm just living my life, doing things, trying to make things. Quick side note: how great is Keyscape? Like, I mean, you're hearing some of the key from the keyboard, but like, it's so nice. So all of that to say, what exactly? We talked about Logan Paul, talked about creating, talked about 2020 being crazy. I was talking about the fact that even though he had negative engagement, it's still engagement. There's people who are like, oh man, I only have like 5 people tune into my streams, and I do them every week, and nobody starts with a bajillion unless they already have an audience. Like, when Will Smith came over to YouTube, of course people are going to tune in because it's Will Smith. Or like when Jack Black made a channel, of course people are going to tune in because it's Jack Black and he's made a career other than YouTube. But if you're just a dude, there's a lot of people who are like, oh, I was just a dude. And like I just saw this guy who collects Yu-Gi-Oh cards that I started following. I think it's Rufix. I don't remember his name. Shows how much I follow him. But I only recently started following him because I'm thinking about getting into card collecting again as a hobby because I need another hobby. I need something that's not like strictly music, that's still fun and still is like a brain teaser playing a game. There's a dissonant chord. Isn't that a dissonant chord? But he went from like, in a year, all he did was like change his camera a little bit, update his lighting, get used to the process of filming more frequently. He got into the rhythm as a collector of being able to like buy a thing, open it up, get a value on stuff, sell it, use the money, buy another thing, open it. Like it was all about like pouring back into the hobby. Whereas some people, they buy, they pull, they don't know how to flip it. They don't know what to do with the value that they have. And then they end up just like sinking into the money they make doing other stuff. And it's just an extra cost rather than like something you pace. Like I'm not going to open something every day. I'm not going to spend 10 grand on it's a base set booster pack of this thing. Or box probably, but like, can I buy a newer set and start there? Can I buy a cheaper set and start there? Sure. Every set has a chase card. That's, I guess, a term for like, everyone's looking for this special card. And isn't that life? Life is one series of chase cards after another. Why, if you are looking for a delightful chase card in your life, maybe consider opening up packs of new opportunities. Those new opportunities can yield something wonderful. Why, just around the corner, there might be something for you to enjoy, something that only you can discover, only you know, and only you can enjoy. Because life doesn't have to be viewed by the external. It can be viewed within, and satisfaction can come from looking at one's own sustained happiness and making those decisions towards it. Life is like a booster pack of opportunity. But the hobby, it's a hobby. And as I'm starting to think of like ways of creating and doing stuff, obviously I'm like, okay, it's a hobby, but I kind of want to make content out of it because it'd be fun. So I'm playing around with the idea, even before I've started a first anything. Like I've started this Patreon. It's like all these ideas I've had for years are now like, oh, I have the schedule and the means and the equipment and everything. Everything's all here. It's all led up here. And I want to just like hit the ground and like do this kind of stuff. So I'm thinking about it. Like, maybe a couple times a month doing some kind of like, oh, we're opening Pokemon and we're opening Yu-Gi-Oh! Because I'm also thinking about Yu-Gi-Oh! Or Yu-Gi-Oh! And Pokemon. And then like a couple times a month I stream a game, live stream a game. And then in the interims, I have clips. A lot of people do that. A lot of people have a streaming schedule and then they curate things for YouTube, or they have a streaming thing and they cut clips from the streams and make a highlights reel or something. That's all doable. And I don't have to be like, oh, I'm streaming for 50 hours, because that's not realistic to what I'm able to do. And the market's changed too. Like, there's people who, years ago, the mentality was like, you got to stream every day, because every day is an opportunity. You get people used to your schedule. You give them content every single day, and that's it. And now it's like, streaming is part of it, but you don't need to do it every day. You can do it 3 times a week, or 4 times a month, as long as you have things coming out on other platforms that can draw people to your stream, or whatever your focus is. Maybe live stream is like you check in with people once a week and that's it. Maybe a live stream is you have a special event or a fundraiser or a live event, or whatever, and you're trying to share that with a wider audience. There's so much room for how you can define your involvement in different mediums, platforms, all these things. And I keep seeing it. I keep seeing people make a career out of the weirdest things. Like, there's a guy on TikTok who made his brand, I guess, off of going up to people in rich cars in like Dallas and being like, hey, what do you do for a living? And then they respond, some of them might get caught off guard, but a lot of them are like, finance, real estate, tech. But it's that question that we've had in our heads as people when we see like, oh, who's driving a Bugatti? Like, who's driving a Lamborghini in Grand Rapids, Michigan? First of all, the roads suck. Why would you get a Lamborghini and drive it through the city? And then second of all, why are you driving into the city in a Lamborghini? Clearly, you don't need to ever go into the city that way, like through town. Like, you could just take the highway, zip past everybody, and get right downtown. But you can, play around with different options, different ideas. Like for today, I want, this has kind of been the lighting I've had for 3 different events. I've had it for my solo piano stream. I had it for a Patreon focused, conversational behind the scenes thing. And then I'm doing it for the podcast. I'm trying a different scenery, trying to find the right one. And maybe the right one is that it evolves, it changes. Because another thing I could do is make a background and have it always be on my green screen, and then frame a shot with lighting, and that's what, every time someone tunes in, that's what they see. But I also like the idea of it's going to be a different experience each time with kind of the same content. It's just, consistency seems to be what gets people hype. Like, you look at thumbnails on YouTube, they all have a very similar format depending on the type of, like, oh, it's a vlog channel that kind of looks like this. Oh, it's a prank thing that's dumb and stupid, and none of the pranks on YouTube are real. Stop following prank channels. They all look like this. Or, the box breakers for the card collectors, they all have like, what did I get? And they like they look at a card that's grayed out or with a question mark, and they're like, I pulled something amazing from this 20-year-old box. And it's always like a title that's not just like, I pulled a very rare card from a box. It's a statement. It's like I don't know. It's like there's uniformity and there's little differences, and some people do it better than others, and that's why they're where they are. But they also didn't start that way. It's all weird. And then companies try and get in, and they're like, we know how to do this YouTube. Like, we're just gonna clip out. We're gonna put up all our commercials because people love commercials. It's like, not all the time. No one wants to see ads, and then you run ads against the ads. I've had that riff in my head all day. So I keep playing it to remember it. But 2021, I'm looking forward to what this year is going to be, because yes, there's still things we have to work out as a society, as a global entity facing a pandemic. Yes, the music industry still has to come back in a very significant way, and it's going to take months. Even when it starts to get warm, it's gonna be an up and down. And I got to a point probably in the summer when things opened up again. I got to a point where I'm like, you know what? The only thing I can do is control what I know I can control. And I've always been a fan of people who do a lot of things themselves, who are able to buckle down and be like, I'm self-produce things. I record things. I write and arrange things. I market things to whatever degree. I can cut video. I can, create images. I can do a podcast. I can do, it's the people who are just like, you know what? I am my most valuable asset. And that's why you don't really find me working necessarily in like a corporate structure, because I'm not as valuable as all of my talents combined. I'm only as valuable as I am to very specific tasks. And I hate that feeling of like, a company never really understanding what I have to offer and then being like, do this one task forever and then we'll take away your pension. Like, that's been happening to so many people. So for 2021, I'm like, I have to call my bluff and just start making things and doing things and trying things and being very publicly falling on my face on things and, making an effort and trying and every time I do something, it pushes that little like, oh no, like, what if you mess up? What if everyone hates this thing that you spent hours doing? What if no one cares about anything for years? And it's like, that's already kind of happened because I'm a musician, and your circle starts tiny, and then you might play in a band or two bands. You might go to school. Like, your network just keeps growing and growing and growing. And so 2021, I feel like a lot of people realized last year that they don't have nothing if they can't do anything. And they don't have anything. They don't have anyone who's like even remotely like interested. They're just like, oh wow, we just like we were just the cheap hire, or we were just the people that filled a space. We were just numbers. We were just this. Like, I'm not talking specifically just music, but like, people realize that their value can be so much more at somewhere else. So you saw people moving and quitting jobs and, changing career paths, changing states, changing environments, changing relationships, changing, like, when you're stuck with the same thing, and you have this magnifying glass on like what you're doing, where you're living, who you're spending your time with, you start to, realize like, oh, I've been surrounded by toxic people, or I've had people enable bad habits, or I've had, people just not invest as much as I invest in them. And it's that I think a lot of this year is going to be people realizing they have more to offer, more to do, more to work with, and they have options. So I'm excited for 2021 to see a lot of people make positive strides, make different changes, and open up the world to a bright new, wonderful, fantastic, look at this go, fantastic day, look at it, it's so fantastic. It's like, it's just a beautiful thing. So I'm really excited to see what people have to offer, what people are willing to like throw together and make themselves and learn and mess up and grow and have frustrating nights and late nights and, you know, long weekends, but they're more passionate about something than they have been in years, and that's at least a hope. We also have a lot of things and indicators that a lot of people are going to go backwards. They're going to triple down on what didn't work because they've had nobody in their life say, like, there's other ways, or they've never had to problem solve other than a very like binary, like, oh, the thing isn't done, I need to get the thing done, and then they just get it done. And they don't think about, like, well, what if I tried this way and I get it done faster than slower? I don't know. I don't work these jobs and I don't have certain lives to certain people where I don't know how to. I understand, you know, like, you could talk to me about a job and be like, oh, okay, I get that. I get what you're doing, but I don't live it, so I don't really get it. I don't get the emotional investment in it, if there is any, or the detachment, or the, you know, like, oh man, 9 to 5, and then you go punch out, and then you gotta punch in to go to see the wife. Oh, to punch out and see the wife. It's like, is your life that miserable where you're like, I go to one place I hate, and then I don't like my home environment, and I don't have any sort of cognitive awareness of either situation being under my control at all. I just complain. Like, I don't know. There's a lot of thoughts about last year, a lot of thoughts about what to come this year, but I want to be optimistic, but also want to keep in mind that what I'm doing is part of a journey. It's not going to be guaranteed, like, I hit everything perfect in a year. I just want to look, again, like I did for 2020. I want to look back on 2021 and be like, wow, I took what I did in 2020 and expanded on it. I learned a lot of new stuff. I had new experiences. I tried some things. I invested in myself more. That's kind of what I'm getting at. You know, 2021, continue investing in yourself however you need to, because it's very clear a lot of people do not care about what you're doing as an individual in the broad scheme of things. There's so many things that can be just denied and taken away, and like, oh, it was here and now it's gone. And it's like, whatever you have control over, whatever you can take care of, like, double down on that. Self-care. And on that note, you know, I wanted to end on a more positive thing. Hopefully this music helps kind of bring it all home. But we're trying this year. We're trying to get people to believe in themselves, invest in themselves. I'm trying to figure out what this podcast is. I'm trying to figure out, like, what projects I can work on, what things people like, what I like, all that good stuff. So I thank you for joining me and welcoming in the new year, for your patronage, for viewing this at all and sharing it. I'm looking forward to making more of these in 2021. So enjoy your day, and I'll see you next time for another episode of the Duchess Snedeker podcast. See you then.